What is happening, guys? Welcome to another episode of Quarantine Convos, where we take subjects, questions submitted by you guys, and we just talk about them, have a little conversation while we're under quarantine. Today's topic is regarding natural bodybuilding and what is 100% natural bodybuilding. This question gets asked all the time, it gets debated, it gets talked about, and it's a really hard one to answer. In all honesty, I go back and forth on this a lot with clients, with friends, with followers, just people, wanting to have a conversation about what is truly natural bodybuilding, and it's a tough one. It really is. One side of the camp is that you've never taken anything ever, no performance enhancing drugs never in your life. There's some people that say, well, if you just don't test positive for the show, then you're technically natural. And there's some people that say, well, maybe there's a time frame, and it's super tricky. And it really depends on the situation. And some shows, for example, some organizations, we take the WNBF for example, they have a 10-year drug-free policy. So you do a lie detector test, and they'll ask you, have you taken any performance-enhancing drugs in the last 10 years? And, the answer should be no. And then they also do, urine testing at the show for all winners and stuff like that. And yes, those tests are not foolproof. They can be passed. They can be, skirted around. But, we hope that people are honorable and would abide by the rules. So when you take the WNBF, for example, they have a 10-year drug-free policy. Well, what if you've taken stuff before that 10 years? Are you still no longer natural? And some people say yes, some people say no, it's in the 10 years, which is, long out of your system by then. And, this is why I don't like to get into arguments about this subject, because everybody's got their opinion, and it's really hard to change someone's mind about this, because people can be so dead set against dead set on their opinion, and they're not open-minded. So, this video, I just want to have an open conversation about it and, give you my insight and my thoughts towards it. So for me, for example, I've never taken any performance-enhancing drugs. I'm 100% natural, have always been, always will be. So, some people will look at me and be like, okay, that's a 100% natural athlete. But if I was to go to a show and someone had taken stuff years and years and years ago, even just like one 12-week cycle of some performance-enhancing drugs, and then 4 or 5 years later, we're on the same stage together, like, should I be mad that they took something that long ago? Is that considered cheating? Is that wrong? And that's where it gets murky, right? It's not just black and white in this subject matter, because if it was, then this wouldn't be a question, right? Everybody would be agreed upon that, never taking anything is natural, or taking anything in the last 10 years is natural, right? So it's not so simple, and that's why I mentioned earlier, I don't like getting into these, arguments with people about it, because they fight about it. I have clients that have made decisions in the past that maybe don't reflect their opinions now, right? Maybe they took stuff in the past when they were younger, whether they were in high school or in college or whatever, and now they're, a little bit older, they don't want to make those decisions anymore, they don't want to take those substances anymore, and they've been, drug-free for 3, 4, 5 years. And they get harped on for wanting to do natural shows, because people say like, oh, you took stuff so long ago, but by the rules and regulations of the shows up here, for example, there's no time frame. So here in Canada, the CPA, the Canadian Physique Alliance, is kind of the primary organization. There is the IDFA, the WNBF has a presence, and their rules might differ, but in the CPA, for example, there's no time frame. There's no saying that you can't take stuff 2 years ago and then compete naturally now. Or the problem with that is that you can take stuff, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but you might be able to take stuff up until the week before the show and still test negative and not be considered taking any drugs, but you know, you've made it to that stage. So it's up and down. It's not just as simple as saying you're natural, you're not, because different organizations have different rules. Everybody's got their own perspective on it, and everybody's got their own opinion on it. And I just like to kind of take things, you know, situation depending, right? So if I have a client that comes to me and says, hey, I took stuff, so it's 2020 right now, right? And they say, I took stuff in 2016, so 4 years ago, right? I did a couple cycles, but now I've been natural ever since. I haven't taken anything. I want to do a natural show. If they're gonna do a show within the CPA, then who's to say they can't do a natural show, right? If they've been natural for 4 years, then is the playing field even? Are they still at an advantage? I don't know. Maybe not though. Maybe it is, you know, they're kind of back to an even playing field. But you take that same client and they say, you know, I took stuff 2016, it's 2020 now, 4 years ago, I want to do a WNBF show. Well, you can't. Their rules say it's 10 years minimum, so you'd have to be 2010, right? So you take that same client, some places he can compete, some places he can't. And that's where it's murky, right? You can't just say nope, because what if that client now, or you know, an individual took stuff years ago, made a bad decision, you know, changed their mind, you know, wants to just now compete naturally, train naturally, bodybuild naturally, and they want to do natural shows, but they say no, you have to do the open shows where people are openly taking performance enhancing drugs all the way up until the show. How is that fair, right? So if I made that decision 4 years ago, but I've been natural ever since, but now you want me to compete against guys that are openly taking stuff all the time, like how is that fair? So it's just, I don't know, that's where the conversation becomes tricky, right? It's not so much that you can say, okay, this person took something. I mean, even if they took one, imagine they take one thing for a couple weeks and they're like, no, this isn't for me. I don't feel right about it. I don't want to ever do that again. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. You know, I apologize to the bodybuilding gods. And they pursue bodybuilding naturally from that point on. It sucks, right? Because then they're in that boat. They have that moral dilemma, and they have people telling them that what they did is wrong, and what they're doing now, trying to compete naturally, is wrong. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm really interested in this. Like I said, I don't like to have arguments about it, but just kind of open conversations, and you know, take things as they are, right? And like I mentioned earlier, I think it's very situation depending, where that client wants to compete or where an athlete wants to compete. I know people have their views on it, right? People say, no, if you've taken anything at any given time, you're no longer natural. But I don't know if it's that cut and dry, right? Because I don't know, because people make mistakes, people make decisions in their past without looking forward, and that, should that dictate, you know, the rest of your life? I don't necessarily think so. I think there's a lot of situations in life in general where we have potentially made mistakes and made decisions that, if people just kept bringing it up and kept saying, no, that's who you are, that's who you were, then we wouldn't be able to move forward with our lives and make advancement and make positive change and make improvements, right? So if we take that same principle and apply it to someone taking performance enhancing drugs, if someone took something when they were playing football in college at 19, 20 years old, and then when they're 26, 27 are competing in natural bodybuilding, like, is that right or wrong? And that's something I want you guys to think about, and that's kind of the mentality and the approach I want everybody to take to this subject, because it's not black and white. It's not that easy. It's not that easy to say, you're natural, you're not, right? Now, of course, if someone's taking stuff right now, then they're not natural, right? If you put someone beside me who's competing in untested shows and is open of their, performance enhancing drug use, well, yeah, they're not natural, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the people that have potentially made decisions years ago and now want to go on a different path with their competing, their fitness, their health, their lifestyle, right? So how do we determine where they can compete? You know what I mean? And that's where the rules of the organization come into play. You take the WNBF with their 10 years, you take other organizations that maybe have 4 or 5 years or whatever, right? And that's where the testing protocols come in when it comes to like the polygraphs and the urine tests and that kind of stuff, to try to weed out who's maybe just trying to squeak through the cracks and not get caught, or people that are genuinely, made decisions years ago, they're going on a different path, they want to compete with natural competitors because they've been natural for years and they want to pursue that path. So yeah, just it's an open conversation for this video, guys. I know it's maybe not as long as other videos have been and maybe not as informative, but this is a subject that was asked and I wanted to quickly touch on it because it's something that I am passionate about, because I am a natural competitor and I don't want people to feel that maybe if they've made mistakes that they can't pursue this style of bodybuilding just because other people have said, no, you made that mistake, you made your bed, you got to lay in it, because that's not always the case. Okay, so hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, give it a like. If you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe for more episodes, for more podcasts, for more vlogs, for all kinds of stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next video.